As we edge closer to the 2023 presidential election, the candidates are intensifying efforts to woo more voters. In this regard, the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has met with business leaders, investors, and captains of industries to present his economic agenda and manifesto for the country. At the session, attended by industrialists, business executives, entrepreneurs, and foreign investors, Tinubu promised to boost industrialization and grow the GDP to a double-digit figure. Let's share the story by TVC News business editor Todulokpe Okujobi with you.
The business community was fully represented with the president of Dangote Group, Mr. Aliko Dangote, Mr. Jimo, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, and other leaders representing sectoral groups operating in the country. Political associates, party leaders, state governors, former and serving senators and lawmakers, senior officers of the campaign council were also in attendance. The APC presidential candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, laid out his action plan before the business leaders and solicited for their support. He believes that a viable economy requires collaboration between political and business leaders.
We must target, and we will, I assure you, target growth. At very least, we must achieve GDP growth of minimum 6%, if not 10% per annum. Promote agriculture. We shall continue to press reforms in the sector that will increase productivity, improve farm incomes while lowering food prices, and bring enough food to the table of ordinary people. Power. Nigeria, I am determined. They are Nigerians. I am determined, I repeat, to give you the affordable and reliable power you need to drive your businesses in a way that lifts the entire economy and ordinary person.
For the vice presidential candidate of the party, the APC team is ready to revive dead industries, promote agriculture, provide power, produce and use made in Nigerian goods, build infrastructure, and most importantly, improve the country's security situation.
That insecurity is a major deterrent of private enterprises and investments, not to talk of the trade to life and livelihoods. That is why we plan to adopt a proactive and intelligence-driven approach to addressing the nation's security challenges. These will include bolstering security forces in numbers, training, equipment, salaries, and welfare. In the last 8 years, our defense budget has increased from 400 billion naira to 1.2 trillion naira per annum. In similar vein, our administration is prepared to make the necessary further investments in order to significantly reduce the nation's security threats. On the other topical matter of the economy, our target, is rightly encapsulated by my principal, is to achieve double-digit GDP growth within a couple of years.
At that time, we all, through his leadership, also created the Lagos Lacete document, which was a sectoral dissection of what the economy and the economics of Lagos should be for the next 5 to 10 years. You will recall also that it was also during his time that we usually have a regular interactive session with the organized private sector. And you also recall that during his time, several firsts were recorded.
The event also featured a panel session largely made up of young Nigerians who brought their minds intelligently on the developmental plan of the APC, which according to them is highly achievable. Todulokpe Okujobi, TVC News, Lagos.
You know, Asiwaju looking confident, younger, and I was working in that suit. And his deputy, Senator Shetima, getting it right.
In terms of the suit.
Yes.
Yes, I think Asiwaju looks way better in a pair of suits. I saw the pictures yesterday. I said, I think this man should dress more in a pair of suits because he was looking really good. And Shetima's suit for yesterday was really very sharp.
Yep.
You will see that nobody will talk about that one now. And the title was a very good one.
Everything
Not
was
like the
spot on.
very wide tie that he wore the
The
last
other
time.
time.
I think generally they got this one right.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
see the creme de la creme of the business society were present. You know, in a way, I try to convey that message clearly that look, I mean well, and I have your interest at heart, talking to the business people,
That the people
the
that
movers and shakers of business in our country, the biggest of them were here. So it's like a man who knows what he's doing and he knows the audience to get his message across to.
Yes.
That is what we saw yesterday.
Critical
So
sector.
you see that generally, both in terms of his speech and the way the event was organized, they got it right. When you get it right, you see that your traducers will have little or nothing to say. I'm yet to read some funny stuff, the sort of funny stuff that we saw earlier on social media. You know, once you leave little or no room for error, you shut up the naysayers.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw yesterday. They got it right in every way. They got it right. And I'm sure that the success of yesterday will propel them to continue to get better.
Bisi?
I think he has done well by meeting the members of the organized private sector. And the fact that he even did it ahead of his opponents, I think that's a plus for him. Also, because the economy is very key. As a matter of fact, the problems we are having now, the Nigeria is in economic shambles, if we may put it that way. And he also touched on insecurity. And for me, what came out for me in that summit is the fact that he identified the areas that he wants to intervene in, and that is key for me. He talked about the reviving dead industries. He talked about promoting agriculture. He talked about providing power, producing and encouraging the use of made in Nigeria goods, building infrastructure, and improving on the country's security. I think these are specifics. They are major specifics. So now I expect that the organized private sector, I expect them to now interrogate these candidates on what the steps they are going to take to achieve all the points, all the areas that have been highlighted. And doing that, I think, is a good one.
All right. Okay, joining us via Zoom for more insights on this is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Communication, Ajuri Ngilale, who is also the Assistant Principal Spokesperson, Tinubu Shetima Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you for joining us, Ajuri.
Always a great privilege to be with you, my colleagues. Good evening to you and good evening to our esteemed viewers.
Thank you.
Yes, Ajuri, what do you make of the meeting that the candidates of the All Progressive Congress had with the business sector yesterday?
Well, I think it really speaks to the seriousness with which the private sector in this country is, taking and relating with the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. At the end of the day, while he hosted the creme de la creme of the private sector of this country and other international partners, other candidates are junketing overseas. Look, charity starts at home. It's important that we understand not just what the issues are, but that we have a very clear and concise plan to deal with those issues. One of the things that I think stood out is the fact that it's going to come down to a credibility question in the end. You're right that all candidates will have their plans, even though one of the three candidates that people talk about is yet to release a manifesto. The credibility question comes in when you ask the fundamental question. You're presenting a plan, right? Have you shown the capacity at any time in your history, whether it's in the public service or in the private sector, of actually being able to perform what you have said that you will do? Out of the three major candidates, we know that there's only one candidate that has done that verifiably, not only having engaged excellently at the heights of the private sector in Mobile and in private endeavors, private business, but also obviously with transforming Lagos State from being a poor, crime-infested state to being one of the leading economies on the continent as a state, not even a country. Okay. And then, of course, we all know the kind of the level of security that has now been ascertained in Lagos State as a result of the interventions brought by the master plan of the candidates. So, yes.
Let's move away from the events of yesterday and talk about his manifesto, the presidential candidate's manifesto. You've been privileged to go through it. What are the big takeaways from that manifesto that you have gone through?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Babajide. Of course, that's the crux of the matter as the manifesto. There are a number of things that I think are very important to note. You've mentioned the issue of security. I think one of the major interventions, as elucidated by our manifesto, is the fact that you're going to have increased specialization within the branches of our armed forces to deal with the very specific and dynamic threats that our country is facing today. One example of that is going to be the establishment of forest guards. These are going to be guards that are going to be specifically equipped, not just with communications equipment, but also with the armament and the protective and protective equipment, as well as the transportation, materials, equipments that they will need, vehicles that they will need to be able to traverse the unique landscapes of our forests across the country, where you have bandits obviously operating, where you have criminal gangs engaging in hostage taking and the like. It's now gone to a stage where we have, in terms of our conventional military outfits, we have done a lot of upgradation within the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration in terms of armament and increasing our presence across the country. We've done a lot on that in that regard. But now the question is, how can we deepen those reforms? How can we now tailor the interventions we're making to the unique threats we're facing? And that is what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is bringing to bear in the manifesto. In addition to that, we have to now be thinking of the welfare of the families. Look, it's not enough of thinking just of the welfare of the soldiers and the professionals in our military, but also when the soldiers, whether they're living or whether they have paid the ultimate sacrifice for the country, what are we going to be able to do now to establish the benefits for the families that are required to see abroad? One of the things that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, upon his assumption of office, will be a set of new benefits that will be blanket for all military families where a loss has occurred, especially where the children, the widows will never have to be thinking of how they're going to cater for their children. Scholarships will be made available for the children of our fallen heroes and other benefits and entitlements to keep families going even beyond the service period of their loved ones. These are some of the interventions we're making. There are so many others. Now, in terms of the economy, which of course is a major issue in the country today, I think it would take me 3 days to go through everything, but I'm going to do my best to summarize. On the issue of agriculture, one of the major interventions that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is bringing to bear within this manifesto where where he has the credibility to also say that he will do what he's saying, is in agriculture, where he's going to put in place, he's going to establish commodity boards across this country, where there's going to be a fixed minimum price of key staple items such as wheat, cocoa, rice, and many other staples, to ensure that our local farmers, our local producers, are able to have a steady baseline of what those commodities are going to sell for in the Nigerian market, to ensure that not only are they able to make their profits, but that we don't have a situation where Nigerian producers are sending they're taking the incentives from government to produce, and then they're now sending the produce across the border because they're able to get more money from neighboring countries. Now we're going to protect our farmers as well as our consumers with these commodity boards. In addition to that, he's going to establish, in collaboration with state and local governments of this country, new storage grain reserves and storage facilities. We know that a major loss, we're talking of up to a third right now of our total agricultural production in this country by small scale and medium scale and large scale farmers, is currently lost as a result of the lack of storage.
Okay, Ajuri, just hold on there. Ajuri, just hold on there. Let me pay these bills. When we come back, we'll talk more. Yes. So I still have the senior special assistant to the president at Mr. Ajuri Ngilale. Ajuri, you were talking about the economy in the blueprint of Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Absolutely. So I was just mentioning in the introduction, a big part of our manifesto in agriculture is the introduction of working with state governments of large-scale storage facilities for grain reserves to ensure the stability of pricing of food commodities across the nation, while also ensuring that we drastically minimize the amount of loss we have from our local producers. Right now, we have about a third of local production being lost to food being spoiled on its way from farm to processing plants, or even farm directly to markets. And this is a major problem. So if we can get mass refrigeration facilities, storage grain reserves, and the like, that's going to not only mitigate those losses, meaning more earnings for our farmers, more wealth within our economy, but it's also going to mean that we're going to have stable pricing of our food items at a time of obviously global economic hardship as it relates to the availability of food. Now, with that said, the other major aspects in terms of where the Nigerian consumer is really going to benefit from the unique policy interventions that will be brought by His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu are in the critical areas of housing and education. If you look at the housing document, housing policy that he's bringing to bear, one of the major things that he has emphasized, not just today that he's running for president, but even as a national leader of the party when he was advising President Muhammadu Buhari, one of the things he emphasized is that we must now have a mass credit credit system for Nigerian consumers, where Nigerians can get access to cheap and affordable credit for things like housing, for things like automobile purchasing, for things like expensive, domestic appliances like refrigerators and the like, so that the average Nigerian does not have to shell out money that they simply don't have upfront, and all of that, which obviously has multiplying effect on corrupt practice and enhancing motivation for corrupt practice, because people can't afford these things on their salaries. If we have a credit system based on the legitimate incomes of Nigerians, then the economy will work the way it's supposed to, and Nigerians will benefit, and the economy will be wealthier as a result, because more people will be included in it. So now on the housing policy, one of the things he's going to do is he's saying we're going to go to the National Assembly and we're going to reform the current Land Use Act in collaboration with state and local governments to streamline the process of availing land to developers across the country. So you will not have a different process in Rivers State from what you have in Lagos State, from what you have in Kano State. Nationwide, it will not be state by state now. It will be a national standard in collaboration with the states for how you access land, the cost of land, and all of that processing streamlined, so that developers will now have access to the land affordably and efficiently. And then on top of that, most importantly,
is that we're going to work with the Central Bank of Nigeria to be able to avail affordable credit to, avail tax incentives as well as other incentives around monetary policy ratios, interbank settlement offers, and the like, to be able to incentivize banks to lend to Nigerian consumers for housing mortgages. So it's one thing to make sure that land is available for developers to be able to develop. On the second leg, the second level of that, we're telling the developers that we're going to give you tax incentives if you devote the land that you want to develop for housing to social housing. That is housing for poor Nigerians, housing for middle-income Nigerians, vulnerable Nigerians. The more housing developments you do for that strata of society, the poor and the middle class, we as a government are going to incentivize you with tax breaks, tax credits, and rebates. And that's the way to go to look out for the ordinary Nigerian in terms of housing. So on the third level, finally, I've mentioned the first level,
yes,
land use. The second,
we could go on and on. But
no, I'm sure you are certainly going to be back.
Definitely.
You are certainly going to be back, Ajuri.
Actually, don't worry, we'll bring you back.
We'll bring you back. We promise you, because we have just stoked your fire, by today's program. We have merely provoked you. And just when you are getting into your elements.
Please, I beg you, you need to give us more time. People need to understand.
No, you will get time. No worry. You will get time.
Well, I listened to Bola Ahmed Tinubu talking about removing subsidy. That's one hydra-headed. You have to take a decision on subsidy. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to a government that will stop this embarrassment happening between the dollar and the naira.
Yes, it has to be a gradual thing. It has to be when the economy is well managed and we get the fiscal policies right as well, we will get there. We'll certainly get there. It's not a day's job. If anybody promises you it will be easy, that person is a liar from the pit of hell. It's going to be tough.
It took years
to
get to this level.
But the kind of leader that Nigeria needs is a leader that is prepared to take tough decisions, no matter whose hawks is God.
Tough decision, as it was. Busy?
Yeah, and I also want to hear more about the specifics concerning the education sector, particularly at the higher education level. Yeah, so when it comes back, I will appreciate if we can dwell more on that.